Hello, Douglas, and welcome everybody to Goodman versus Gottlieb. I'm Jeff Goodman. He is Doug Gottlieb, and I'm here, if you can't tell, Doug, at FAU for the big Field of 68 tip-off tonight that starts between FAU and Liberty, undefeated Liberty Flames. But first, before we get to that, and we will later on in the show, let's talk about last night's action, Doug. And Duke went to Fayetteville. And it was the first time I think they had ever played at Fayetteville because Coach K doesn't really like to go away from home during the non-conference unless he has to. And they got, I don't want to say smacked, but it wasn't pretty for most of the game. And they came up short against an Arkansas team, Doug, that was without its best player, Tremont Mark, who was out with a back injury after that scary fall he had last week. Trevon Brazile led the way. He had 19 points and 11 rebounds. But I want to talk about Duke. What is wrong with the Blue Devils, Doug? Are you worried?
No, not really. I mean, am I worried from what perspective? Like, did I think they were going to be undefeated? I did not.
No.
Did I think that Arkansas – I mean, did you think – we did our picks yesterday. I told you I liked Arkansas. Home team, SEC team. Unbelievable atmosphere in Fayetteville last night. Kyle Filipowski gets in foul trouble early. What do you think's going to happen? Am I concerned about, them having a second or a third guy? Yeah, I am, because everyone else shot the ball so poorly that it felt like they were kind of searching for offensive answers, especially when Flip was out of the game. But am I concerned that, there's going to be a long stain because you lost Arkansas? No, you played a legit SEC program, and they're still trying to figure out who they are. On the road, great atmosphere, get in foul trouble, and made a game of it late. And I'm actually more concerned that Arkansas doesn't have a press break than I am a Duke. But they need to shoot the basketball better, as the stats would tell you. And I think they need to learn to find more shots off Filipowski than they have. And I think one thing people are doing is, and this is a kind of story nationally, is making you score from two and not giving you open good looks from three is definitely part of everyone's defensive game plan. And I think that's what Arkansas did last night. It was very effective.
Tyrese Proctor, another underwhelming game, Doug. And that's where my concern lies more than anything else right now with this Duke team, right? I mean, we expected him to be an All-American candidate. Filipowski has lived up to the expectations. And, again, the only question was going to be whether he came back from the double hip surgery as good or, better than what he was. And he has for the most part. The freshman guards have been up and down, McCain and Foster. But Proctor is now a sophomore, and he has honestly regressed from the end of last year. That's where my concern lies more than anything else. Well, if he does not step up, how good can they really be? Can they be a Final Four team without Proctor being at least an all-league-ish type player?
Okay, so let me help you out with what the game plan was from Arkansas and why it made it really hard for Tyrese Proctor. So Tyrese Proctor is a mid-range, get to the rim scorer, right? He's an improving three-point shooter, but not a great shooter. And Roach gave you 22. Roach played well enough to help you win. But Mark Mitchell, Arkansas didn't guard Mark Mitchell. They decided, hey, we're going to live with it. And he went 0 of 3 from 3. And instead they went to power. Okay, so when you take Mark Mitchell out, that kills your offensive rebounding. He's a very good defender, a very good athlete. And you go to the bench and you bring in inexperienced, not as good defensively, maybe better offensively. But again, Mitchell's minutes for Tyrese Proctor, you had his man was in the lane. So it's like two guys in the lane, your guy, another guy, and it really limited what he could do. It was a brilliant game plan and one that Duke is going to have to rework. All right, what are we going to do with Mark Mitchell if somebody doesn't guard him? Right? Are we going to make him into the 5? Are we going to put him in the dunker? How are we going to do it? But there was a reason that the lane was a lot more muddy than it had been previously. And some of it is Proctor, and that people are going to, dare him to make threes a little bit or contested threes. But a lot of it was Mitchell and the fact that Eric Musselman smartly decided, let's not guard him. And that, frankly, chased him out of the game and changed how Duke really wanted to play.
And you know what? We saw TJ Power for the first time yesterday, a kid who I loved on the circuit a year and change ago. And what he can do is stretch it. He's 6'8". He can shoot the hell out of the ball. He had a little bit of a tough adjustment in the preseason, but I think you might see a little bit more of TJ Power because, like you said, if you're not guarding Mark Mitchell, it takes away a lot of that spacing. So again, something to watch for certainly for Duke as we move forward here. Meanwhile, North Carolina, Doug, put up 100 on Tennessee. I don't think anybody saw that coming because Tennessee has been one of the best defensive teams for years now under Rick Barnes. The Vols lost their third straight to a ranked opponent. You see it here, though. Purdue, Kansas, North Carolina, like the gauntlet of all gauntlets, right? What did this three-game stretch tell us about the Vols, other than the fact that, you know what, Dalton Knecht can play against anybody. He put up 37 last night and carried them offensively. But are we at all concerned that this Tennessee team isn't going to be able to hang its hat on defense like it had been able to?
Well, again, like like what you get on offense, you lack on defense. Right? And one of the reasons that some people were hesitant about a lot of these, low major, mid major players is, okay, they look really good on offense, but can they guard anybody? And, you got to live with it, right? Like with Knecht, if he's going to have 37, you can live with it. But now all of a sudden, are your other four defenders good enough? I did see this coming. I didn't know who it was going to be from North Carolina to make shots, but playing in their building, they got the game at their pace. Tennessee played into their hands a little bit. I think the addition of Cadeau, who's just, he's a ball mover, right? Yes, he's a shot creator, but he's just one other guy that he really knows how to move the ball and get them into what they want. And North Carolina looks they're a pretty team to watch offensively right now because they're playing with great fluidity. They put 3 or 4 guys out there that can shoot. They got a big guy in Armando Bacot that can score enough inside. And then they're just good enough defensively. And Tennessee's not a team that can really expose them defensively. But the other part to it is, and you saw this from Arkansas last night, Duke does it as well. Oklahoma's doing it. I was a little surprised that Tennessee didn't press to slow Carolina down. It's one of the things teams used to, you go back 20 years ago, you press to speed somebody up. Now you press really to slow somebody down. I think you let North Carolina run up and down, and it doesn't matter who the coach is over the past, 30 years. They're going to make you look bad because they got skilled dudes, and that's what happened last night.
Yeah, listen, you went from Caleb Love to Elliot Cadeau, and you can't be more different. And again, listen, Caleb Love, I think it's worked out for everybody involved right now because the ball moves, as you said, with Cadeau. He's just looking to pass, advance, make people better. And that works with this group because you've got enough shooters and now enough space. And Cormac Ryan gives him a little bit of that grit and toughness that really they didn't have a year ago. And Harrison Ingram, you're out there on the West Coast. Kind of what people thought a little bit of Harrison Ingram when he left Stanford. He came in as a heralded recruit, never really did a whole lot with the Cardinal, and then he transfers out, and there are a lot of question marks about, is Harrison Ingram a winner? Is he going to be able to really impact Carolina? He's been awesome, yes. Doug.
I agree. Like, MO was he was soft. MO was, ACC, tough league, no way. Soft, right? But very skilled, has shown better toughness than people thought. And they've done a great job because he's playing that 4. He's getting open looks. And what they had 2 years ago, they didn't have last year. And they finally have it this year in a floor stretcher at that 4 spot. And it changes everything. But he's really skilled, very intelligent kid. And I, like you said, I think Cormac Ryan and some of those guys bring a little level of toughness that he needed and that he's kind of built up a little bit, playing as a confident player.
Yeah, this Carolina team's fun to watch. Villanova was fun to watch just a few days ago in the Bahamas. They were terrific. I mean, they blew out Memphis. They were up, 100, it felt like. And then last night, they go up against a St. Joe's team that I really like. I watched them against Kentucky. They should have beaten Kentucky. They've got a kid named Eric Reynolds, who, if you haven't seen him, He is a bucket, and he's an NBA player, in my opinion. And Villanova lays an egg. They laid an egg in a Big Five game like this, which never happens with Villanova. They've owned the Big Five for, it feels like, a decade. And St. Joe's beats them. And now, yeah, very nice.
Amazing.
Very
That's
nice of
amazing.
Dust. I think that's a picture of me back in Lithuania. Looks like it. Anyway, my biggest concern, Doug, is point guard play at Villanova.
Yes.
Period. Yeah. And I know, like I've said,
one.
maybe they can get away with it. I felt pretty good after the Bahamas. All right, they're going to be able to figure out a way without great point guard play. It's not good enough. It wasn't good enough last year. It's not good enough again. Justin Moore is not a point guard, and I think Mark Armstrong is a really good backup point guard, period.
Yeah, if you don't have a point guard, you're going to look like a much more poorly coached team. And how about they've beaten everybody except the two Big Five teams, lose to Penn and lose to St. Joe's. So some of it is about the City Series, the Big Five. Some of it is about the flaws in this team. A lot of it is about kind of pace of play. And I thought St. Joe's, they did a great job of, Villanova is, regardless of who the head coach has been, they do a very, very good job of loading to the ball defensively. And they really make you play kind of 1-on-5 or 2-on-5 with your offense. I thought St. Joe's had some nice actions where not only you have your best player with the ball, but he has the space to go and get buckets. So am I concerned about Nova? Yeah. But if we dial back our expectations from what happened in Atlantis and we just go, hey, you and I, as well as Rob Doster and everybody else we work with, we thought, okay, you got Marquette, you got UConn, like those two especially you feel really good about in this league. And then we have like 3 or 4 others, Creighton among them, with Villanova, right? And Providence, like those are the 5 teams. And I thought coming into the year, Nova would be fortunate to be with that second group. I still think they're with that second group, so I'm not freaking out. Now, locally, is it a bigger thing because they had dominated for a decade, the Big Five? Yes. And now they've lost 2 of these games. But I think if we take a breath,
Doug,
go ahead.
Doug, how much pressure is Kyle Neptune going to be under? Let's say he doesn't make the tournament this year, and that would be 0 for 2. Last year, we gave him a mulligan because, honestly, there are a lot of things not under his control. This year, they're healthy. This is his team. They got a $3 million NIL payroll. So this fan base isn't going to be.
You can't make the tournament with a $3 million NIL payroll. Something's wrong. Now, they're going to make the tournament. But I mean that. I was having this discussion. I had a discussion last night with 3 different high major coaches. And I said, what do we think the budget is to make the tournament? What do we think the budget is to win the tournament? And it's like $2 million, you should make the tournament.
Yeah.
$5 million, you got a chance to win the tournament. So if they're at 3, they should be better. But do I think there's pressure on him? Yeah, there's going to be you don't take that job filling in for Jay Wright unless you knew there was going to be some pressure. I think they'll make the tournament, so I don't think that conversation happens. But I also think that, remember, it wasn't just they were making the tournament and win national championships. They were the Kansas of that league when Jay was there.
Yeah.
Now, they had been a high major, and many of those teams were more mid-major pluses and stepped up into that. And they've, the rising tide had lifted all the ships. But I think it's less about the tournament and more about, dude, we were wrecking this league. And now we're kind of an also-ran. So
yeah,
Jay loves him. Jay's around. Jay's not divisive. I think he'll be fine. But, yes, it's definitely going to take some adjustment considering the amount of resources that have been thrown at this team.
Yeah, if they don't make the tournament this year, he goes in on the hot seat, squarely on the hot seat next year. But I agree with you. They're going to make the tournament. It's whether they're going to be a 9-10 seed and just get in the tournament, or if they're going to be actual players when the tournament rolls around. All right, another big upset. Saw Virginia beat Texas A&M. I don't think it was a big upset because anytime you got Tony Bennett coaching, I know they were blown out by Wisconsin lately. They've been up and down. They don't have a roster that you look at and you're intimidated. Reese Beekman's a very nice player, But when he's your best player and your go-to guy, that means you probably don't have enough talent to go deep in the NCAA tournament. But when you have Tony Bennett as the head coach, Doug, we both know better than to write off the Virginia Cavaliers. Did this game tell you more about Virginia still being a player a little bit in the ACC race, or more about Texas A&M and saying, you know what, maybe we overrated Texas A&M, some people putting them as the SEC favorite preseason?
I think, can I answer yes to both? Can both of these things be true?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, I think A&M is better, but I don't see them win the SEC. I think Virginia isn't as good as they've been, but I don't see them falling off a cliff, right? They're too well coached. They're too much of a system team. That arena is a legit home court advantage. I think both of these things are true. I don't think Virginia is a player at the top of the ACC, right? But they're unbelievable defensively. They force you to play the way that they want you to play. If you can't make shots early, it's going to be a long night. And they made some shots early last night. But I do think that the tales of the demise of the Virginia Cavaliers have been greatly exaggerated. And the same can be true for A&M. Like the thought that they're going to win the SEC, I didn't buy that. I'm not sure I can sit here and pick who's going to win the SEC. I mean, Kentucky feels like the easy pick, but that's just because we saw them stomp Miami. Because we know they're going to throw a bad performance out there with their youth at some point. But considering they've been playing without their big man to play as well as they played, Kentucky. But again, it's a road game. We got to also balance that. But I think both of those statements are true. Virginia is better than we thought. A&M's not a favorite to win the SEC.
Coming up, we are looking ahead to a top 5 tilt between UConn and Kansas. Think about that. Donovan Clingan, Hunter Dickinson going at each other. That's next right here on Goodman versus Gottlieb. All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb. I'm Jeff Goodman. He is Doug Gottlieb, and we're going to talk a little bit here about the Field of 68 Invitational. I'm here at FAU. FAU plays Liberty, but first, we got a great matchup tomorrow night, and it is not only two of the best teams, but two of the best bigs in the country. One who's completely proven in Hunter Dickinson, transferred from Michigan to Kansas. He's been tremendous for the Jayhawks so far this season, probably better than he was even in Ann Arbor. And the other, UConn's Donovan Clingan, who kind of moves into that premier role after the departure of Adama Sanogo. So can UConn, I know I give you the word can too much, and you always say, of course they can. Will UConn, will they go into Lawrence and Fog Allen, where Bill Self's record is like ridiculous. It's like 96% or something of the games he's coached there, he's won. Will Danny Hurley and the defending national champions come out of Lawrence, Kansas, and go back to Stores with a win, Douglas?
I don't think so. And it's not a talent thing. It's not a coaching thing. I think UConn is expertly coached, and I think they probably have, if you line up their roster like 1 through 9, their roster is better than Kansas, especially with Arterio Morris off the team. You know, they're like a guy short in the starting line.
And with Stephon Castle on the court, which he's not going to be in this game, the star freshman
right.
for.
I want to see Castle play in this environment. We won't. And then I'd love to see Clingan in this game. The problem is he's going against a grown man and one who's really, really physical. And my guess is probably gets in a little bit of foul trouble, and UConn's a different team, especially defensively, when Clingan's not in the game. Do I think and look, Kansas has lost these games before. You know, they've lost these big Kentucky, when they won the national championship 2 years ago, Kentucky went in and beat them. San Diego State 1 year around this time went in and beat them. It's not that Kansas, especially in non-conference games, is unbeatable. I don't love the matchup for UConn, especially without Castle playing, especially with the youth of Clingan. I know he has a ton of experience, and they have a good amount of depth. But I just feel like this is a game in which Kansas is allowed to be very physical. And if they are, like, they got grown men. They're tremendous at the point guard position in terms of understanding how to win. And they have just enough perimeter scoring to beat you. Yeah, look, if it gets to be a foul fest, you get into the bench. UConn's bench is much better than Kansas' bench. I just don't think that happens in Lawrence.
So it 94.8%, Bill Self's record at Fog Allen, which is crazy. Here's the big difference. UConn's got shooters, right? They've got no shortage of guys who can shoot the ball, from Tristan Newton to Cam Spencer. Solo ball, the freshman, hasn't shot it well so far, but he's a pretty good shooter as well. So they built a team on shooting. Dan Hurley told me that in the preseason. He said, after we lost to New Mexico State, and it was like pulling teeth to score points and make shots from the perimeter, I changed my complete outlook. And look at what it did, right? It helped get him a national title last year. Well, Bill Self, we just kind of assume he's going to figure this thing out because he is maybe the best coach in America, despite the shooting woes of this team. I mean, listen, DeJuan Harris made 5 of 6 in Chicago. You were ready to anoint him as the best point guard in America. He goes out last game. He scores 1 point, Doug. 1 point against Eastern Illinois. Like, come on. Timberlake can't make shots from deep. KJ Adams can't shoot it from deep. How long are we going to rely on Hunter Dickinson to be your best perimeter shooter? I just don't have any faith that this team is going to be able to, again, they're going to win their games. They're going to win their share of games because they're Kansas and they're coached by Bill Self. But I don't think the pieces fit together, Doug.
I'm not going to dispute that, right? But he's had plenty of teams where you're like, no way. You know? Now, I believe in the Big East Big 12 Challenge, I think they use Big East reps when you're on the road in the Big 12, and then vice versa when you're on the road in the Big East. So that could help UConn because playing in Lawrence is 5-on-8. It's one of the reasons he's 94%. And But like you're right. Like DeJuan Harris is not a great shooter, but he's gonna make shots in big games. He knows when to do it. You have three guys, and even KJ Adams, who played all last year. But really, you have three players who have played 100 games of high major college basketball, either in the Big Ten, the Big 12, in your starting lineup. That's really hard to replace, right? Really hard to replace. You got two players that have won a national championship, again, and I think this is one where the experience of playing in this level of game really matters. I think you're better at the point. I think you're better at the five, and that's why I think Kansas wins. But again, you're right. Like, they don't have, the fact that you go and get Timberlake and he has been a shell of himself. We'll see if this is a game in which you can stick him on Spencer and he can survive, and maybe he doesn't get overwhelmed, because he looked overwhelmed against Kentucky. But he had even against Eastern the other night, he hadn't had a game which you're like, all right, here we go. That's why he was so sought after in the portal.
The Field of 68 tip-off takes place in Boca tonight. I don't know if you see my little pin here. This is a Vlad Golden, FAU big man, who's actually leading Dusty May's team in scoring so far, which is shocking. Number 13 FAU plays at home here against 6-0 Liberty. And Richie McKay's done an incredible job with this Liberty Flames program over the last few years, 5 years in particular, that he's got them playing at an incredibly high level. But here's what it is, Doug. It's three teams down here, and they're rotating, playing each other. Three mid-majors that really can't get good games generally. Now, FAU's a little bit different this year. They'll play Illinois next week at the Garden in Jimmy V. Then they'll play Arizona out in Vegas. So they can get good games this year. But generally, these three mid-major programs have trouble getting games. So what they're going to do is kind of round-robin it at a different site each year. This year it's at Boca. Next year it goes to Charleston, our city. And then the following year it will end up in Liberty. And they'll play each other over the course of 3 days. Tonight, FAU Liberty. Tomorrow night, Charleston Liberty. And then the final one is FAU against Charleston on Saturday. So FAU looks like FAU again. We've talked about this a little bit. Elijah Martin starting to kind of find his groove again. Janelle Davis, those guys are awesome. Golden's been terrific. But this Liberty team is shooting the hell out of the basketball so far this year, Doug. And they won the Myrtle Beach. I got a kid named Kyle Rode, who's a fifth-year senior, who's just gotten steadily better every single year. This could be a dangerous one for FAU. The only thing, and you brought up this point the other day, and I thought it was a brilliant point, that the loss to Bryant was the best thing for this FAU program. No matter how focused we thought and grounded we thought these kids are, it just got them to where, okay, you know what? You can't look past anybody right now. And they're not going to be looking past Liberty tonight.
No, I love the setup. Okay, I mean, I love the setup. My fear in it, though, is that it's a little bit like Bracket Buster. If we remember back to the Bracket Buster, where the idea is a really good one, but what you really want is, instead of these three teams, 6 teams, 3 high majors, 3 mid majors, and then everybody plays everybody, and then you get a chance to kind of build your resume. Instead, you're kind of beating up on everybody, and what feels like it'll happen this year is, somebody's going to end up going 0-2, and I don't know if they participate next year, right? Like Charleston goes 0-2, you're like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that one next year, because
I think they signed the deal.
Guess,
hey, Doug, they already signed the contract for 3 years. They can't they can probably get out of it, but they're probably going to pay.
Yes. So it's fascinating. I love all of these different events, because outside of a couple teams, Florida Atlantic being one of those teams, most people don't know what they got. You're still trying to figure out what it looks like in a real game, how it all works together, who you're going to play, how much you're going to play them. And you don't really we're going to talk a little bit later about Big Ten is starting conference play this week. Yikes. So you kind of got to figure it out in short order. And this is when you get 2 games in 2 days or 2 games in 3 days, plus coming off of an MTE like Florida Atlantic did, like Liberty did. I think you get a really good sense. Okay, now we know who we are. Now we know who we are. That's really still what this is. And yeah, the Florida Atlantic thing, they've been better since Bryant. They shared the ball more. They've gotten back to who they are. They're playing inside out. You know, if you don't guard Golden, he's going to eat you up. If you do, they're going to hit you for more threes. They play that 4 out and 5 out kind of look. And I think for Liberty and for Charleston, the great thing for them is they don't have to play a high major to play a team that's a high major caliber team. So they're going to get their weaknesses will get massively exposed here over the next couple of nights as well.
As Doug mentioned, conference play in the Big Ten does tip off this weekend. Saturday, it's Illinois against Rutgers. Are you a fan of conference games this early on in the calendar? Can Illinois pose a threat to Purdue's perch at the top of the Big Ten, Doug?
No, they're not going to be a threat at the top of the Big Ten. And I'm more of a fan of this than I think most people are, and I'll tell you why. I don't mind these games if your students are in session and it's not during dead week, during finals week. Because those games that are played around New Year's and no students are around, it's way more difficult on the home team than it should be. So I don't mind them. Like, look, I love the more conference games you should play, the better. I truly believe that. Like we play these guarantee games. Why? Play a conference game, your arena is going to be full more often, and we're going to get a chance to see what you look like against the proper level of competition more often. So I like I like conference games being played before Christmas break. But that being said, that means I would like no conference games during Christmas break, if that makes sense, for the students. Because the students, I mean, look at Arkansas last night. Look at Fort Collins last night. Those places were on fire. They were awesome. And no matter how supportive the town is, it's just not the same when the students aren't there. So I actually like this more than others would.
I'm going to give you one quote before we go to break here and come back. And sticking with the Big Ten, and Indiana plays Maryland tomorrow in a Big Ten game. Mike Woodson was asked about Indiana's three-point shooting struggles, and they've been about as bad as anybody in the country. His quote was, "Maybe we'll be the team that makes the tournament not making threes." You ever think of that? Your response, Doug?
You got no shot. You got no shot.
Agree.
You're not winning consistently in college basketball unless you're making 3-point shots. Just reality. You know, I'm actually, you know, you're in Boca, I'm in Stillwater, getting ready to watch Creighton take on Oklahoma State. Yeah. Creighton scores the highest percentage of points in the country from behind the 3-point line. Now, they got beat by Colorado State. Isaiah Stevens was awesome. Colorado State had a great defensive game plan, and it was a no-doubter. It was not a particularly close game that they beat Colorado, that they lost to Colorado State. That said, like, that style is going to work more long-term. You got to be able to guard somebody, got to be able to keep people in front, got to defend the rim, can't give up layups. But tough twos as opposed to threes, if you want to show me a piece of data that shows that works, I would love to see it, because it's like people who say Washington. They're slowly dying out.
It worked back in the 1980s. Coming up, Kenny Payne said something he probably should have kept to himself. You get to hear it on the other side of this break. Make sure you stick around, because you are going to want to hear it. Listen, Doug, I've never seen you in that blue suit in the graphic. I don't know where they got that from, but I haven't seen you dressed up that well in, I don't know, 10 years.
What? I do college basketball games on television. Wear a suit and a tie often. Like, what you talk?
All right, listen. Louisville took down Bellarmine barely last night. All right, they were down at halftime, which is kind of the norm these days. But it's not what Kenny Payne did on the court. It's what he had to say after the game about Tyler Johnson that got everyone's attention. Listen to this.
You ready for this? I probably shouldn't tell you this. We didn't have the tights that he wanted, so he didn't know if he wanted to play. Oh, yeah.
What?
You heard it. We didn't have the tights that he wanted, that we've never had for him, and he decided, I don't feel like I can go. That's what young people do.
I don't even know what to say, Doug. All I know is sometimes there are things better left unsaid. And when you stink, like Louisville stinks, if you're Bill Self, if you're Tom Izzo, if you're John Calipari, you can say those things. It doesn't matter. But right now, if your name is Kenny Payne and you are fighting for any credibility you have, you do not want anything like this out there, that one of your players is basically saying he doesn't want to play because he doesn't have the right kind of tights. Keep that to yourself, Kenny, please.
Let's start with a couple of things. I think you and I both know Kenny. He's a great dude, right? Like, he's not a bad human being in any way.
No, he's a great guy.
And a lot of what you are and who you are is based upon who you're around, right? And like you said, like, you're around John Calipari that much. Now, Cal's persona is different, but Cal can say whatever he wants, right? Literally can say whatever he wants. And I'm sure that in his mind, Kenny was just trying to say, like, can you believe this crap? Like, we're getting ready to play a college basketball game, and we need to win games, and this dude wants to wear some tights we don't ever have. But I probably shouldn't be saying this is like saying, hey, no offense. Something offensive is going to come out, right? No disrespect, but that means something disrespectful is going to come out. And when you say, I shouldn't be saying this, you're saying something you shouldn't be saying, right? Because now, I mean, how would you like to be the kid today? And don't get me wrong, like,
He
it
deserves
really
it.
is about, like, of course he deserves it, but that's not how it's going to feel to him. Now, everywhere he goes in the ACC, they got their chant. You know, they're just going to ride him the whole time, and he'll feel embarrassed, as he should be. But again, it's just like, I get it. We all get it. We have kids, and we're around kids, and when you see the things, you know, you have kids now that, like, hey, I don't want to eat pregame meal because I don't like where that meal is from, because now they all have money in their pocket, right? They can go buy their own food.
They'll order their
Like,
own.
are you kidding me? We never did that. But just because times change doesn't mean you expose when a kid is likely to be embarrassed. So that was an all. And then, you know, you go, if this was the only thing, you go back a week ago, and he said that he was tricked, not knowing that Indiana was going to play zone, that Mike Whitson would play zone. Again, you can think this. You can know this. What are you doing saying it, man?
Listen.
Not great.
These news conferences of Kenny Payne are more entertaining than the games themselves. So I'm all
Agreed.
for it on one end. But you know what Kenny Payne needs? He needs a PR person right now. That's what he needs, Doug. He needs somebody to tell him, hey, not every thought that goes through your head has to come out of your mouth, especially in front of the media right now. All right, time for a game, Doug. Time for a game.
Okay.
Word association. I'm going to throw out some players' names, and we're both going to kind of throw out a word. I know this is so hard for you because keeping you to one word is honestly an impossibility of all impossibilities.
Okay.
But we're going to try.
Okay,
We're going
good.
to try to play it in. Clemson's P.J. Hall. Clemson just got a big win against Alabama. P.J. Hall.
Confident. You know, struck me as a guy who Clemson goes and plays at Alabama, and he looked like the game was very slow to him. He looked very, very confident.
I'm going to go underrated, Doug. I'm going to go underrated, not just in his game, but his hair as well. I think he's got underrated hair, and people haven't given him enough credit for what he's done on the court throughout his career at Clemson. I think they're going to make the tournament this year. Not only that, I think they're going to make the tournament, and I think they're going to get to the second weekend. I know that's hard to say without knowing who they're playing, but I think they have a chance to be a second weekend team coming out of the ACC. All right, Javian McCollum, transfer to Oklahoma. You know him pretty well. You know, goes up against your Cowboys. He's a scoring guard.
I saw them against Central Michigan in person. So I've seen Javion play a bunch.
One word.
Well, that would be kind of it's 3 words with hyphens. Under the radar, right?
Yeah.
Probably one of the best under the radar portal guys that there is, right? We saw Jalen Pickett come out of Siena as a grad transfer, and his game transitioned to the Big Ten quite well. McCollum can lead the team, he can run a team, he can really shoot and score. And what OU has needed desperately over the past couple of years, he provides in a guy who can create his and other shots. He is an under-the-radar portal star.
All right, I'm going to use 2 words, Porter's savior. I think he kind of helps Porter Moser get to the tournament, and if he does that, he's the savior for Porter Moser, because otherwise he goes into year 4 next year without a tournament on his resume in Norman. All right, next one. My favorite point guard in the country, your second favorite point guard in the country, Marquette's Tyler Kolek. Go.
General. He's just the general, right? He directs everything. He's constantly talking. Like, the hardest thing in basketball nowadays is getting players to talk, right? I never forget this. I was at a practice once, and a coach was like, if we left 5 cell phones on their chairs, they would communicate during timeouts, but they don't know how to talk. You watch Tyler Kolek, and obviously he's a super confident East Coast verbal kid, but he's a general. He does whatever it takes to win, not afraid to score, really good leader, physical defender, and he talks. He communicates. He gets his guys where they need to get. He's tremendous.
Fearless. I'm going with fearless. You just watch him, and, man, the way he took it at Zach Edey in that game that they didn't win against Purdue, that kid is just fearless. Like you said, he's just got the edge to him. He's got the chip in his shoulder. Providence and Rhode Island, neither one offered him a scholarship coming out of high school in Rhode Island, and he uses that to his advantage. Again, Kolek's special. He's special as a college point guard, and I think he'll be an NBA point guard. All right, the last one I got for you. Purdue's Fletcher Lawyer, who last year came out of the gates so strong, got hurt, finished slow, and he's been a little up and down this year, but go ahead, Fletcher Lawyer, Purdue.
Sneaky star, right? Sneaky star. Again, the Purdue progression of guys is actually what it used to be. Now, the only difference is they were starting 2 freshmen, and freshmen didn't used to start. But, you go from starting as a freshman, having some good games, having some games you're overwhelmed. Sophomore year, like this year, you're going to have some peaks, a couple of valleys, but less valleys than before. And the expectation is year 3, year 4, you're an all-league caliber player. But Fletcher Lawyer is kind of a sneaky star. Because of his size, there's a lot of ways in which they can use him. Because of his experience at a young age, and because of how well coached he was at the youth level, like, he's not surprised by a lot of things. He sees things a little bit earlier. But I think he's probably the least discussed, really important piece for Purdue. Right? We talk about Edey. We talk about Smith. We don't talk enough about Lawyer. And he's probably the second most important offensive weapon, kind of a sneaky star.
I'm going to say this, and I know it's longer than a word here, but needs to be more reliable, needs to be more consistent. That's my big thing with Fletcher Lawyer. And I hate to go with a negative here, but I think in order for Purdue to, again, get to a Final Four, win a national title, Fletcher Lawyer can't have those off games like he's had?
I would like to point out that for the record, I was supposed to be the one that would struggle with the one-word thing, and you just added a sentence in there. That was.
Yes, I did struggle. I couldn't come up with a good one-word one for Fletcher Lawyer there, but next time I'll do better. I give you credit. You passed with flying colors. I failed that one, and you have the advantage in this edition, this episode of Goodman versus Gottlieb. You're catching up with me. All right, coming up, it's time to pick some winners for this weekend's games, and we got some good ones. Find out who we're backing on the other side of the break. All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb, final segment. First of all, we've been running a poll during the show. Who has been the most surprising team in college hoops? Mississippi State in the lead there. BYU, I would probably give it to Colorado State. I mean, they beat Creighton by 20, and then last night without their starting center and Jalen Lake coming off the bench with a broken finger getting 15 or 16 points, they beat Colorado. I'm going to give it to the Rams and Isaiah Stevens. All right, time to end the show with some buzzer beaters.
I think Oklahoma is deserving of mention, right? 10 new players in that team, and painfully unathletic. They get athletic, and this is not how Porter Moser really wanted to build a team. He's a culture guy. He likes multiple year guys, and he usually likes. When I don't know if you know this, when he was at Loyola. When they were good, they had usually a point guard or a guard who had transferred in, just like Javon McCullum, but they'd all sat out for a year and absorbed the culture. So it's different. they beat Iowa and USC over the weekend down in San Diego. That was pretty surprising from where I sit.
All right, time to end the show, excuse me, with some buzzer beaters and game winners, Doug. We'll start with a big one Friday night. Number 4, UConn, traveling to Lawrence against number 5, Kansas. I'm taking the Jayhawks here just because I'm never stupid enough to bet against Bill Self at Fog Allen. But I do think, they could be picked off here. They could definitely be picked off if Klingon, they get the ball down to Klingon and they get big boy Hunter Dickinson in foul trouble. It might be a battle of attrition between the bigs here.
Completely agree. And also, you talk about the attrition is UConn likes to play fast, and we mentioned Kansas does not have much of a bench. Not have much of a bench. I'm going to take Kansas just because they're Kansas. It's at the Fog. But if we look back, the last gigantic non-conference home game Kansas had at the Fog, I believe, was 2 years ago. It was Kentucky, and the Kentucky team that lost in the NCAA tournament to St. Peter's ran them off the floor. It's not always indicative of the season that they'll have. Sometimes it's about matchups.
Illinois against Rutgers. Rutgers is, to me, in a down year. Illinois can't shoot right now. From the line, pretty much from 3. They can't shoot from anywhere for the first 6 games of the year. But I like him against Rutgers because I think this is a major rebuild year for Steve Peichel before he loads up potentially with 2 of the top 5 recruits in the country next year.
I would agree that, if it's played anywhere on earth outside of the rack, you take Illinois by 5 or more. It is play the rack. They do play way above their level there. And when you don't have great point guard play and great shooting, you leave yourself up to the potential of being beaten. I think this is a closer than you guessed game. I do think Illinois wins.
Michigan versus Oregon, an appetizer to a college football playoff matchup between the schools.
I guess I'm going to take Oregon. Again, it takes Dana Altman usually until January to figure out what he's got. And if you look at the up and down of their season
you know
so
what
far,
he doesn't have? He doesn't have front court guys. Ollie Dante, he's down 2. Last year they had no guards; they were hurt. This year now, Nate Biddle and N'Faly Dante are both out for at least a month. So now he's got no bigs.
Yeah, that said, I'm again strictly going with Michigan not being as good as you'd think, and also having Doug's a young point guard on the road. I'm going to take Oregon in a close game.
I'm going to go Michigan here. I just think, again, too many injuries. I feel bad for Dana Altman because he is a hell of a coach, but when you're dealing without guards last year, now bigs, I just feel bad for him. All right, good one. USC against number 11 Gonzaga. This is a very interesting one. Who do you like?
I like Gonzaga a lot. Saw USC play over the weekend against at UC San Diego. I like what they have. 2 really good guards. But I feel like Gonzaga, Anton Watson's taking his game to a higher level. I think the bigs are far better for Gonzaga. I'm going to take Gonzaga.
Last one, Douglas. I'm going to go Gonzaga too against USC. I think USC just, they don't have a ton of depth. They've been banged up. Creighton versus Nebraska, the big in-state battle there. Nebraska, the Fighting Hoibergs have been pretty good out of the gates.
And they beat them last year, right? Remember, Nebraska beat them last year at Creighton. And we're going to see Oklahoma State play Creighton tonight. I think Nebraska gets them. 3-point shooting contest in Lincoln. I'm going to take Nebraska.
All right, I'm going Creighton on that one. Doug, a pleasure. I'm going to bring you back a Vlad Golden pin. We'll see you next week. Goodman.
I'm going to bring you absolutely nothing. I'm going to bring you nothing.